Hey, it is Bennington, and that's our house band today, the Mighty Mighty Pretenders. I'm Ron Bennington. With me, as always, Gail Bennington, no relation.
Hello.
Good to see you this morning, Gail.
It's good to see you.
Mighty Pretenders, Miss Chrissy Hine.
The amazing Miss Chrissy Hine.
Did I say it wrong by not saying amazing? I didn't.
She needed some sort of compliment at the beginning of that name.
Okay, so it's the amazing Miss Chrissy Hine from the Mighty Mighty Pretenders. You know why I call them Mighty Mighty Pretenders? At Live Aid, that's what Jack Nicholson said after the Mighty Mighty Pretenders. Wow, they're great. Something like that.
Why?
Because he's Jack, and he's just, he was doing little stage intros. And I always remember him saying, Mighty Mighty Pretenders. And after that, that's all I want to call him. And then when Mighty Mighty Boss Tones came along, I was just like this. It's like someone's trying to steal that Jack Nicholson thing from the Pretenders. Really annoyed me.
Mighty Mighty definitely suits them, though.
I know a kid that they called Mighty Milk. And that's... And then there was a horse. It was a mighty horse that rocked the fat ass. So anytime mighty gets used, it's a good thing.
It's a positive.
Yeah. The Pretenders, I sometimes I get into weird debates all the time. And I know I've probably brought this up before, but I think maybe the greatest debut album all time. The greatest first album.
It's a perfect album, and it's their first album.
Do you mind, though, that there's a cover song on there?
I don't mind.
Okay, good.
A cover song of our previous house band.
Oh, yeah, the Kinks and the previous Mr. Hine. Mm-hmm. He was married. Do you know I've had Chrissy Hine on the show before, and then both of her ex-husbands.
Weird.
But I never brought it up to any of them. But I
When
just
are you going
want
to
to.
have her daughter on?
I would love to have her daughter on. I saw her after her arrest for, was it an anti-PETA thing?
She gets into the environmental stuff, so
Good.
she, I think, ties herself up to trees and so people don't cut them down.
Let's do more shit like that too, man. Let's start tying herself up.
Like camps out in the treetops so people don't...
I've been tying myself up to rocks so people don't de-rock because I say rock on.
For those about the rock.
We salute you. Maybe the dumbest line ever. There should be no saluting in rock under any circumstances.
To rock and roll.
I'm sorry, we rocking or are we an army? Which one are we here?
It's a very formal greeting for rock.
It is. We salute you. But the debut album, well, here's the funny thing about the debut album. I'll just say this. If you look at the Beatles and the Stones and Elvis, like those guys were kind of growing up when they were trying to put together albums. Yes. So you have to get into the rock a little bit before you could even say greatest first album. Because most guys didn't even know they were making albums. I don't even think the Stones knew they were supposed to write songs when they put their first album out.
They were just throwing it together.
Yeah, somebody had to say to them, okay, now write,
But Pretenders came out like a fully fledged band.
Done. They were done.
I think that she had an idea of what she wanted to be and the sound that they were going to have, and they had it
to write songs when they put their first album out.
They were just throwing it together.
Yeah, somebody had to say to them, okay, now write,
But Pretenders came out like a fully fledged band.
Done. They were done.
I think that she had an idea of what she wanted to be and the sound that they were going to have, and they had it right out the gate.
Do you know I even tried to say to her this exact thing? Like I said, I think maybe the greatest debut album. And she just looked at me in a way that sad. I mean, she didn't say it out loud, but a part of me said, why would anyone think of something so stupid? And that's how I felt. At that little minute there, I felt like I lost her. Like, I'm measuring you against everyone else you love.
Because she's just thinking... You think she was just not getting the compliment for herself?
Well, she loves rock and roll. She and I ended up mainly talking about radio. The kind of radio she listened to when she was younger.
She seemed like she was, before she was a rock star, a fan of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
she wrote, too. She was like a rock journalist.
Oh, that's cool.
which I always want to be. You know, one of my favorite people to see around Sirius XM is Dave Marsh from Rolling Stone, because I read so much of his stuff when I was younger. And then I used to think writing for Rolling Stone was about as tits as you could get. I got to go blind to some of these calls here. I don't know what happened with my young producer today. He did not put my team together. Hi, you're on Bennington. Who's this?
Hey, it's Brian. What
Hey,
about
Brian.
the Iraqi army? You said you wanted to, there's too much looting in the army and rocking and those about to rock. How about the Iraqi army?
So for those about to rock, the Iraqi army. I don't think that they're the rock types.
No, I think you'd actually be stoned to death, which is also ironic because it's Iraqi rock army.
You know, that is so crazy. And then when you said a little ironic, I was thinking a little too ironic. It's like rain.
Don't you think?
That was a big first album for her, huh?
It was huge.
That may have been like the biggest first album had. Maybe them or Boston.
Mm-hmm. It was my first concert too from that album.
You can't get better than that.
Yeah.
And your arena. You were a big arena, right?
It was like a huge, yeah.
Yeah, that was actually the largest concert you probably went to. Nathan in Brooklyn.
Hey, Ronnie, how you doing?
Good.
Good morning, Gail.
Good morning.
Yeah, you know about Andrew Oldham had to lock Mick and Keith into a room overnight, and told them he was not going to unlock the door until they wrote a song together.
It's crazy when you really think about it.
Yeah.
And like their initial thing, and I had talked about this from like even Ray Davies from the Kinks, they found out like, hey, if we could at least write a B-side, we'll get more money. You know what I mean? Like, the publishing, that's what they started thinking about. So they were like, let's get something going. We just know how to cover. And then all of a sudden to, write the kind of songs that all those guys wrote.
Yeah. I also think there was a time that, like, it took the album to become, I don't know what I'm saying, but I feel like first it was about singles and songs, and it took a while for the album to become the piece of art. You know what I mean? I
would say like 66, I would say Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
I think after Pet Sounds, everybody else said, okay, I get it.
Right.
Big album.
Yeah, start to finish.
Yeah.
And it tells the story or it goes on.
Not that there weren't a lot of albums before that and people put a lot of good stuff out. But I think after they saw that, they were like, oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Pet Sounds.
Set the bar.
Sounds that the pets make.
I get it.
All right, Wrecking Crew. Okay. You haven't seen the Wrecking Crew movie yet?
I haven't.
Sometimes you just really frustrate me.
I really want to.
Forget it.
No, I'm
Sorry.
going to.
No, who cares now? Ralphie in Ohio. You're on Bennington.
Hey, Ronnie, greatest ever. Hey, and your show's great. Love it. Hey, what about the Kiss Army? I mean, that's an army. So
the Kiss Army is an actual army, and I was asked to join the Kiss Army when I was younger and ended up going to Canada instead. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't be part of the Kiss Army. Here's Aaron. Aaron in Canada.
Mr. Ron Bennington, how are you?
Hey, what's up, dude?
Not too much. I just wanted to correct you. I don't call the correct people on the radio much, but
no, I want you to.
Alanis Morissette was actually a teeny bopper, and she had an album out up in Canada here way before that album.
Good call. I missed that Canadian
was not
import.
her debut album. Not that I'm a big fan, but
no, it's a very good call because if you put out an independent album first, you know what I mean. That's why there's a lot of people that you can't throw that in, and having the perfect debut album, as the Mighty Mighty Pretenders did, it has to be done straight out of the box. Nothing else. I'm going to ask you this: I wouldn't count. Even if you were in other bands and put out album. Like I wouldn't say, oh, Crosby, Stills and Nash, great first album. Sorry, you boys were other bands, so you're not up for the great debut
It's not
album.
The first time you sang a song.
Yes. We've already saluted you before you went out to rock.
The album art on that first Alanis Morissette, she looked like Tiffany there. Like, it's so funny, and she's completely reinvented as.
Right, she came back. It's just so like
I'm different now, guys.
I've been through so much. Being a Canadian children's star.
I've loved and lost.
And then loved again. And it was all with the guy from Full House. When people found that out, they're like, really? This is what you're bitching and crying about?
Popeye from Full House left me.
He did do a lot of Popeye impressions.
Yeah, that was his thing.
866-766-0339. We have a lot to get to today, but I got caught up on this first album thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a first album because here's the thing. I think to have the great first album, not only is the sound have to be there fully formed, right? So you can't go through like a Beatles thing where, oh, you get a lot better in a couple albums.
Right.
I want an album for a first album award winner to be almost impossible to follow.
Right.
Like, I don't know why we went on after that first album. We said everything we needed to say.
Well, for me, I think of The Strokes' Is This It?
It's a great.
It was a great first album, fully realized sound. They had other good albums after it, but it was...
They couldn't follow it.
I don't think that they ever could.
No. It's tough to follow. Also, I like a sound no one's heard before or hasn't even heard in a long time.
Yeah.
Black Sabbath's first album where people had to go, what? Wait, what? What just happened? Did the devil make an album? And is he walking around now? I mean, we were saluting rock, but now I want to run from it.
Satan is among us.
It really, was just a very unique sound. I think the Doors' first album.
Perfect album.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy first album.
I guess you've also got to figure most of those guys and girls who died young and had great careers. Probably the first album was pretty solid because there was such a short window of making music.
All right, you're basically talking about Mr. Jimi Hendrix when you say that.
Exactly.
Mr. Jimi Hendrix, where everybody went, what was that? Oh, it's gone. Mm-hmm. Boom. And that first album is unbelievable.
Are You Experienced is the first one?
Yeah. Well, let's look at it. But you know what? The thing is this. He doesn't... nothing sounded like him before.
Yeah.
I mean, just look what the guitar sounded like just a couple years before.
It's
I don't know.
Where does he even come from? He just
Seattle.
Well, I meant
like so many good things. He comes from Seattle. Rob in Virginia.
Yeah, I heard you just talk about, Ron, that if you already have released an album or been in a band before, you can't have a great first album. What about Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters?
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Foo Fighters has a debut album. Very different from, I wouldn't say, it's not a debut album because you played drums in Nirvana.
Oh, because you're saying because he played all the instruments and sang and he didn't do that before. I might give Dave Grohl the asterisk as being somebody who I will say your Foo Fighters album might be very unique and you may be able to fit into you may be able to get around look, let me just say something here. I'm here to push this conversation along, not stop it.
I'm sorry, Ron. Ronnie.
But here's the thing. Are you giving him any Nirvana credit for first album? Because he wasn't on that, was he? He wasn't on Bleach, was he?
He was not.
Thank you.
But
thank you, sir. No further
you
questions. You may step down, sir. You may step down. We are Bennington, and we fix everything. Hashtag Bennington on the Twitter tweets for all the Twitter followers, and if you'd like to give us a call. And the phones have exploded here this morning because sometimes you take a conversation like this, and it's so goddamn important that it's bigger than if people were flying planes into the Alps or buildings are exploding all around us in New York. You're talking about debut albums and how important that is.
You can always come here to Bennington. Be safe from the world outside.
Safe, because it's so scary. It's so scary.
Talk about some tunes.
Yeah.
Talk about some movies sometimes. Just, chill out.
Yeah. We'll talk about movies of tunes or tunes that have been made into movies, which is a rare feat. Actually, I could get into that. It's either movies that should be songs or songs that should be movies. But I don't want to, the phone's exploded for debut albums. Let's go over here to Chris, Indiana.
Good morning, Ron. I want to bring up Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses. Because when that album came out, there was a lot of hair metal, and you could say Guns N' Roses at the time was hair metal, but they kind of brought it back to the roots of like real rock, like the Rolling Stones and stuff like that.
It may have saved rock for a few years. It may have saved the rock.
I have a memory of that album that, like, when I first... It was like the first time I ever put on music by myself. Mm-hmm. So I had taken Appetite for Destruction, like put it in the tape player, and press play, and then you guys came running in, like, "What did you do?" Listen to some music, just thought a little GNR for myself.
What's happening in here? What happened in the baby's room? She's rocking, honey. The baby's rocking. Welcome to the jungle. Yeah, it's a perfect first album, and I would make the case that they never made a better album. Here's the other thing that I think that I like about Appetite as being, first of all, the band looked different from what everybody else was doing. They were. They were crazy and they were great. But also, and I like this, you have the big hit single that draws people in, but then there's a lot of other great songs. Mm-hmm. Some people have that big hit single and you're like, oh, this doesn't even sound like, the rest of the album doesn't even sound like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking to you, Blind Melon. I'm just going to just point that out. I'm not saying either sound is bad, but you put out a song that doesn't sound like the rest.
Sound like the rest of the album.
What are you... you got to somehow go, all right, it fits in. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say something controversial now. It just popped into my head because of this. A lot of people are going to be angry, and we're going to get angry letters mailed to us. But I'd say that was true of the Counting Crows. That the Counting Crows had that big song, and then when people went to the album...
What was the first single?
The Mr. Jones. Look, we're trying to be... people get so mad at that song because he's talking about being a rock star. He just gave away any cool, you know what I mean? We want to climb the charts. But that band's still around playing, and, we're 20 years in.
Yeah.
But
the rest of the album didn't sound like that.
No, it did.
Oh, it did.
I'm saying it fit in. The rest of the stuff that wasn't singles, you're like... What I'm saying is, like, maybe the big hit single, not even necessarily your favorite song from the album. Or you just have a mess of hit singles. You know what I mean? You get a mess of songs that play radio play. I could bring up Leonard Skinner for that, which a lot of people never give a lot of critical love to.
Their first album is...
Yeah, it's got all the great stuff on it.
It's a single medley.
Yeah, DJ's backing me up now. Hey, DJ.
Hey, Ronnie.
I just saw you pop up, but I don't want to steal your thunder.
Album?
Give it to me.
How about Leonard Skinner's debut album?
Yeah, I was just saying that. It's actually really, really great. And a lot of people...
Appetite for Destruction be disqualified because L.A. Guns had an album out?
No, I don't. Because it wasn't that. It wasn't an album that people knew the way we're talking about, like Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Not Yet Young. They could have, if we didn't set up these parameters, they might have been on the charts twice.
We added Young. This is our second debut album.
We're a new band again. You know what? Maybe if we took our band and put Neil Young into it, it would get even better. I got a crazy idea. Now that we got young, should we get Paul McCartney and like every album just add more and more great people? What do you think of this? Is like Lollapalooza this year. McCartney is going to be headlining and Metallica. I'm like, where's the alt?
Yeah. Thought it was supposed to be...
I thought it was those about the alt.
We salute you.
Yeah.
Too.
We also salute you.
As a subcategory of rock.
We salute you as a subcategory. Getting a little too into it, aren't you, boys? Boy, hey, that was a cold rain out there this morning, huh?
Very.
I was enjoying it.
You liked it?
Yeah, I wasn't exactly awake. I didn't sleep a lot of hours last night. So when the cold rain hit, I'm like, okay.
It's like morning coffee.
Yeah, it's like a little morning wake up.
Didn't get much sleep?
No. Well, I'm very, very busy right now with this, Sweet 16 going into the Elite 8. And I'm needed to be there for every game.
Yeah. They need you.
I don't know why I didn't just say I'm going to go to bed once Kentucky was up by 40. But I was like, I'm going to see how bad this beat up is.
I haven't been following. I don't follow.
You don't follow.
It's not.
You're not
it's
a basket.
Unique to this year. It's
yes. I haven't been keeping up this year.
Been, keeping up with something I'm not interested in.
I don't speak as much German as I probably should this year. I don't know whether I was doing an impression of you,
I know.
but
I hope
not. My name's Gail. You know how you talk that way.
Guess so.
It's the hashtag Bennington on the Twitter. And if you want to give us a call, even though you'll never get through these phones, 866-766-0339. Just keep calling and calling.
I've got another one for you.
Yeah.
Or should it? What if it's stolen from someone? Just go for it?
Just go for it.
Okay. REM, Murmur.
Sorry, Pete.
Oh,
Gail.
no,
Pete. I made up Pete's thing. I would agree with that very much. This is the thing there. Not only did A, great first album, B, a really different sound, but now I'm going to add C, started its own genre, its own rock genre, which was college rock. Mm-hmm. And I remember when people used to say this, for those about the college rock,
another subgenre.
Do you think the people at the record store goes like this? We're going to need another one of those clips. We've got a new subgenre.
They need a label maker. So this is right there.
Oh, God damn it. Can we at least take out African jazz and use that label?
Radio Free Europe opens that album. What a great
unbelievable
opening song to an album.
Oh, jeez. Opening song to a debut album.
Precious is the opening song.
Unbelievable.
You know what's great, too, about that album? I feel like in that album, the first side and the second side are even its own two.
Oh, I agree.
Like, first album has all this, the first side has all this energy. Second side is like kind of a little bit more mellow and soulful. And
for the people who don't even understand, I probably didn't even get to the second side for a long time.
Yeah.
I just stayed first side. I've done that back in the album days. I'm just like, haven't gotten around to the second side.
First side's so good. Why bother?
I'm dating the first side now exclusively, and I'd feel weird going out with the second side.
Just feel weird flipping. But I have specifically about the Pretenders' first album. Yeah. I have had I'm really in the mood to listen to the first side of the Pretenders album. I've done that. Specifically put it on.
I do that with a lot of albums. But yeah, that one is to start your own subgenre. I mean, and then now not to have the love today, REM, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like when I started to apologize for Counting Crows, people apologize for REM. And I'm like, wait, what are you apologizing for?
For what? Why apologize?
Yeah, why? Because they're shiny, happy people? Fuck that. You're fine.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I like that song. I'm not ashamed to say it.
Here we go.
It's fun. It's happy.
Here we go.
What's the problem? Love that band.
Clint in Texas.
Morning, Bennington.
Hey, good morning.
So I was gonna throw in Weezer Blue.
Good call.
I mean, I could listen to that from front to back. Also, I was gonna say, Gail, have you ever listened to Room on Fire? Those shows?
Yes.
And you don't think that's better than the debut?
I'm just saying. The point was it's a solid first album. It doesn't mean their other albums are bad. I'm just saying they came out the gate with the right sound.
A lot of heat.
Yeah, you could make the case, like when I even brought up The Doors, which maybe was the first of the debut albums.
Right.
You could make the case that that's not their best album.
Yeah. Doesn't necessarily mean it's their best album. It's just a great first album.
But you've got the entire sound of the band.
Yes.
You know, and that's where you went in with Black Sabbath.
And you can definitely say that about the Strokes. They had their sound set by their first album. And they did a little bit variations on different albums, but I think that they really came out of the gate with this.
Yeah, they did. They did a hell of a job. I salute them. I salute you. Mark.
Good morning, Ron. Gail, how you doing?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Van Halen 1.
It's actually a good call with the Van Halen 1 because, you know, you have that whole new, that tapping style of guitar, you know what I mean, was on that. I see you making a little face
I'm just trying to remember what's all on the first album.
Running with the Devil, You Really Got Me.
Yeah, it's very strong.
Solid.
It's very strong. Let's go ahead. Running with the Devil, Eruption, You Really Got Me, and Talking About Love. And plus, like I said, there was a whole new sound there.
Mm-hmm.
Like what he did with the guitar in that first album.
Yeah.
By the way, they're going on, I forget what show, I think Jimmy Kimmel. First time ever they were on TV with Diamond Dave in their entire career.
Really?
Yeah.
That's shocking to me.
Well, back then, where were they going to go on? The Tonight Show in 78? It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Dave was out of the band by 84, I guess.
Ponytail Dave.
Ponytail Dave. Is that what that was your name for him?
That's what I called him, yeah. I had quite a crush as a young toddler on Ponytail Dave.
You did. And that's because that's when he was in this whole Bolger Bop. But I remember one time he was on like MTV and you're like literally a toddler and you're all happy and you're jumping around and then went on to the next song and you started crying. And I was like,
right now just thinking of it.
I was like, I don't know what to tell you. They're not going to give him a rock block.
It's hard to explain things to children.
It's hard to tell children to like anything because they'll just cry when it's not on and then ruin it. All right, that's it. No more rock. No one's going to rock now because of the tears. I like when people write to us, don't forget Hendrix. Michael.
You didn't.
Yeah, no, we didn't. But I just like the fact that somebody would say that. Johnny was bringing up that this was a topic that he and I were talking about before. Hard Rock Johnny. What he does, he has a thing that he has greatest debut album pants. And it could be by anybody in the band. But it doesn't matter.
Just their first pants?
Just their first pants, or pant, as he calls it.
Like little baby pants?
Your pant. Yeah. Well, I got pant from watching, what's that other big show that the people they sew and then they're voted off?
The Fashion
Police.
Show.
The fashion show.
No.
For those about the fashion.
Project Runway.
Yeah, that's it. Project Runway.
It's a great pant.
It's a wonderful pant. You will be making a pant this week. Marvin, Bama.
Hey, guys. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hang on. I'm trying to get the speaker. Yeah, the Police's first album, Lens Them Moors, had Roxanne on it.
It's a great album, I thought. I thought it was different at the time. That kind of, I don't know what.
Well, it was different if you've never heard black people play reggae.
And Ron, can I ask you one more thing?
This is whiter than I'm used to.
It's whiter and lighter.
Can I ask you one more thing?
What?
Have you were talking about that stupid lyric for those about to rock, we salute you. Has there ever been a song that uses the lyric rock and roll or rock that's really worth a crap? For some reason,
I disagree 100%. If I will go so far to say this, if you have the term rock and roll in your song, I probably love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I can only think of one that stands out as bad.
What's that?
Old time of rock and roll.
Okay, you got me.
That's kind of corny.
Yeah.
But I think usually it's a good thing to say.
Look, one of the greatest debut albums, if not the greatest, the Velvet Underground, when they did the song Rock and Roll, perfect.
I think that might be the definitive answer to this whole thing, might be.
What's that?
Velvet Underground and Nico.
What'll happen out walking?
That might be the best.
All right, let's go over this entire concept. Give me all the songs on this. Make it large so we can see. Sunday morning. I'm waiting for the man. Femme fatale. All right, not only that. Then Venus and Furs. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's insane.
Heroin. There she goes again.
Bananas.
And oddly, they had a banana on that one album.
Mm-hmm. That's
this is
actually
amazing.
How that term started.
After that album, people started to say things were bananas if they were wildly good.
It's insane. This could be...
This is crazy. You might be right.
Definitive.
I just think if I could get into a time machine to make out with Nico, I think it would be well worth using the time machine. But here's the thing. What if Edie Sedgwick walked in? I'm like, I don't. This is so weird.
This is awkward.
Yeah. Let's just forget this happened.
Nico's the coolest.
She's pretty damn cool. Beautiful too, right? Just stunningly beautiful. The idea of being in love with a dead girl was always the craziest thing.
Yeah, I feel like I had that many times.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, for George Washington alone.
Well, they can't hurt you anymore.
They can't change.
They can't change. They've left their legacy behind.
You know where they are. They're not running around on you. All right, see you tomorrow back here at the coffin site. Because I don't want to call it a grave.
Love you, ghost boyfriend.
All right, Remy Green says, but the Velvet Underground sucks monkey balls, hipsters. Let me say this, Remy. I wish there was a way of turning off someone's fucking radio from here. If I could make an invention that would make the world better, that you would look over and see someone who fucking wrote something so douchey and then added hipsters as if that made it. You know who you sound like, Remy? One of the guys that fucking just shot everybody at the end of the motorcycle movie. Easy Rider. Like, just pull up in your big dumb truck and fucking shoot Peter Fonda. The only way that movie would be better if he yelled out, "Here, hipster! We're taking it back, hipster!" And there's someone down south right now going like this, "Hey, just because we talk like this, don't mean we don't like the Velvet Underground." That's the guy I love.
He sounds like he should. He should be incredibly uncool or like.
But he's not. Yeah. He's like, "Hey, you guys never brought up Ricky Lee Jones's first album. That thing kicked ass, hipster." And I say that in a really positive sense.
As I identify as hipster as well.
I'm a hipster down here in Alabama. Hey, what about them Alabama shakes?
You need to invent that, though.
What's that?
Your turn the radio off.
I would love to. And then just walk down the hall and present it to Scott. I have something perfect for us. Someone gives a bad call, just so stupid, and we just disconnect our radio from here. And he's like, that's not what we're trying to do.
We want more listeners.
Yeah, but some we want to get away from. Like, prune it. Prune it. But we have 180 stations, so everybody gets what they want. Turn some of the stations off that we don't like. Hey, Garrison.
Good morning, Benningtons.
Good morning.
Hey, I was wondering, is it really the debut album or the breakthrough album?
No,
because
it's the debut
there's a lot
album.
of groups that had like 5 albums before they, like B-52s, their first album was great, but
we're not
nobody
talking about them.
really heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could bring up Greatest Last Album, or but that's not what
Greatest
we're
sophomore?
doing.
Greatest sophomore album?
Believe me, I'm a big fan of the sophomore albums. Anybody who beats the sophomore jinx, A-OK in my book.
Now, I'd say that someone brought up Weezer Blue. I think the sophomore album is...
Well, even like Metallica, they had 5 albums before.
But that's
Their
not what we're
fifth album
talking
was
about,
the one that
Garrison.
actually came through.
This is not it. Some other day we'll have,
next Bennington.
Yeah, on the next Bennington, we thought you sucked, and then you had a breakthrough album.
And then best third
So
album?
your favorite is by
Pinkerton.
Weezer?
Yeah.
Oh, hipster. Because that might have been the first hipster album where you were saying Pinkerton is my favorite.
Well,
it didn't sell except for the sensitive people.
I think it's Weezer's Pet Sounds.
I think it's their Pinkerton sounds.
That is, it's a great album.
It's a great album.
The Blue album is great. It's a good debut album, but this is, I think, their best album.
But you know what's really funny? People that like Pinkerton will just start running down the Blue album. Oh, I'm sorry. It's none of the pop shit that you like. You're like, it's the same band. Why are you turning on them?
And then they came back with Green, and everyone's like,
aha,
okay.
you're back.
All right, let's see where this goes. And then we don't talk about anything else that happened with Weezer.
Look, can I just say this to you? If you love something by somebody, that's enough.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
I feel that way.
I don't need to worry about what they're doing now. We shared a very special time.
Somebody will say to me, "Oh, do you like Aerosmith?" I go, "I love them," and they'll go, "What?" And I go, "Oh, I mean, like pre-1977."
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean I don't love them.
Yeah.
I do love them.
You know who I kind of have that feeling about is like it's a very easy thing to run down U2. It's very easy to run down U2, and I don't think that's necessarily fair. It's a lot of great early stuff. It's a lot of just great stuff.
A lot of great stuff. Very, very consistent. You know, I know. You're right.
They've been out for a long time.
And
You're not going to like everything they do. Boy's a great album. That's their first album. Boy.
You're basically looking at they had at least one great album in like so many different decades that it's crazy. That's what if it's up to Garrison. He's going like this. Why aren't you bringing up bands that had good albums in every decade? Why isn't your topic about every possible topic there is?
And don't forget all the other topics.
Yeah. We drive people crazy. Sarah in Garden City, if there is such a place.
There is. It's on Long Island.
Sounds like it's Eden. I live in Garden City.
Imagine.
Yeah.
That would be lovely. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How about Oasis's first album? Definitely Maybe.
It's great first album.
Great. Had like 4
Did they
or
ever
5
even
number
follow
one
it properly, you think?
What?
Do you think they ever even topped that first album? No.
Topped it? No. Followed it very well with What's the Story, Morning Glory.
Right. That is
that's also another classic album. Yeah. It's really a great band that a lot of people act like they suddenly hate it. Like, I hate those guys.
Turned hard on those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're over now anyway.
Well, nothing's ever over in the world of rock.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Again, they're like, they hate each other, and would beat each other up backstage.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with me. I don't care if people get along all that well. You know, I was watching the other night. I caught The In-Laws on Turner Classic Movie. Such a great movie from like I think '79 or something. And then afterwards, Alan Arkin was doing this this interview, and the guy was saying, "Did you have fun on that movie?" And Arkin's like, "It's weird how everyone always wants you to say yes, no matter what movie you've done." And I'm like, he's like, they want, people want the Beatles all to get along together. They don't.
Yeah.
That's weird, right?
Yeah, I think it probably has to do something with the fact that like everyone wants to.
Because it's driving me nuts. I'll give it back at the end of the semester.
Everyone wants to be a musician. Everybody wants to be an actor. Like maybe that it's that you have this fantasy of what that job is like, and so you want it to be fun. You just want it to be all a party, and
they want everybody to be best friends.
Yeah.
Like, and you were all best friends? Yes, we were. Everybody in the film was a best friend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why we do, but people hate it. And I love when like people try to get you to take a side in a band. They're like, "Are you a Mick guy or a Keith guy?"
Yeah.
You're like, really? I have to, just because they fight with each other, I can't like them both? It's like if I say something about Robbie Robertson, all the Levon fans call in, and I go like this. I don't know what you're talking about, dude.
Yeah, why can't you love both?
I'm not a judge who was here to divide up all the assets of the band. By the way, the band, we should have said that right off the bat.
Big Pink, right? Music
Yeah.
for Big Pink.
That album's so great that one time I was up. Well, this was exactly, I think, when you started to be able to go out and put an address in and then follow it in your car. And I found Big Pink when I was up at Woodstock.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And I pulled up to it, and it looked just like Big Pink. You know what I mean? Like nothing looked different.
Weird.
It was
That's so
amazing.
Cool.
And it was like...
what is it? It's just a house that...
Yeah, it's just a house that they recorded in, the basement tapes and stuff like that. And it was just, kind of a pink house. That's it. And, I mean, it looks exactly like that, dude, right now.
That's awesome.
And I just drove out. I never got my picture taken in front of anything. I just did it. And got back in the car, and I just went, I feel insane right now. I don't know. I don't even know if I've ever... looked at the Statue of Liberty and felt like, oh my God, that's the Statue of Liberty, or that's the Grand Canyon, the way I felt about Big Pink.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's do the track listing on Big Pink, because that's such a good...
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It's so good.
It's such an amazing first album. Tears of Rage.
Yeah.
By the way, first song right out of the box.
Amazing.
The Weight is on that album. Yeah. Everything the
so
band
good
does anyway. I always go through, like, I've never 2 years in a row had the same favorite song by the band. It always changes.
Yeah.
I'm always like, this is my obsessive song by the band. Slate said one that a lot of people have called in with, but I don't have one up now. Pearl Jam 10. I know you're not a Pearl Jam fan, right?
No, but
you're Nirvana. You're one of those people that divides.
I don't have to pit them against each other, but if we're going to,
why would we?
But I have no problem with them.
No problem is not being a fan.
No, I'm not a fan.
But you're going to show up and yell out, I have absolutely no problem with this band.
Look, there's a lot of big songs on this album.
It's really, they're one of those bands that if you went to see them, you're like, I hope they do a lot of stuff from the first two albums. Could you play more of your early music? Do you not want to talk about all the horrible things in the world and we'll just stay here?
Yeah.
Stay here in our radio tree fort?
Mm-hmm. Our little bunker of...
There's nothing wrong. Now we're going to finger paint everyone.
This sounds like a cult.
I guess it is a cult in a lot of ways. The cult of Bennington.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that also reminds me of Cult of Personality. Great first album.
Very good.
Just a Random Donk says, Ron, what about Kiss's debut album? 3/4 of that album are classics. Mm.
You don't feel good about that?
I don't want to say anything. Don't want to comment. I always say, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything. Mm-hmm. Wait, I never say that.
No.
I say look for the weakness and enjoy. Chris in New Jersey.
Get them in the crosshairs and then take them down.
Yeah, I know it's not Appetite for Destruction or Jimi Hendrix, but Rage Against the Machine's self-titled album.
First of all, there is a great YouTube video of them at some college where they just set up and played for free when they were like kids. And you'll just see people just walking to their classes behind them. I think it may even be like the first time that they ever played together.
Really?
Yeah. And they were just in some kind of like little square of the quad or whatever these colleges call this stupid shit.
Are they playing any of the songs from the
They
first
sounds
album?
just like
Oh, wow.
themselves. Yeah, this is it. Now look at everybody just walking past Rage. Not stopping. And like within a year, they're going to be, a giant band.
That's crazy. They're just walking to class.
This is what they're playing. Look, these kids aren't stopping.
They're like, can I go to the dining hall? That's nuts, man. Like, I like this film person here. It's just like, wait a second, this is good.
Hey, music's changing in front of me. Isn't that amazing?
Like it could be the school that I went to.
Yeah, I know. It's like some Santa Barbara thing. Where one or two... Yeah, the girl doing is probably a girlfriend that's up front. Like, hey, I thought it went great. I was talking to some of the guys in the quad.
Some people stop for like a full song. So that was cool.
How amazing is this stuff?
I thought we want one of those. It's like, oh, another jam band. Like they just think it's like.
Hey, Train, what's the name of this for people who are looking? What's the name of this YouTube?
It's Rage Against the Machine first public performance.
It's amazing to have that.
So cool.
Look, now we've doubled in size.
There's got to be at least 6 people listening to this right now.
Listen, I'm decided with fraternity I'm going to rush.
That one girl just like bopping her head. Like,
she's just like,
all right.
I don't know what's happening here. I wonder what school is this? Does it say, Train?
Cal State Northridge. 91.
91. So, but by 92, they were a gigantic band?
That's crazy.
Remember your cousin was obsessed with them? Just obsessed.
I remember that he was staying over our house, and he was going to bed with huge headphones on, huge cans, blaring Rage Against the Machine. Like, that's not sleepy time music. It helps me sleep, relaxes me.
And now he's just 100% Bob Marley.
Yeah.
Ty in Washington.
Hey, I've got two of them for you guys. NWA, Straight Outta Compton, and Daft Punk, Homework.
Well, first of all, this is why people should never give two of anything, because you kind of cover up the first one. But NWA, Straight Outta Compton, made an entire country go, uh-oh.
Yikes.
Uh-oh. They have automatic weapons, and they're mad at us. And they're coming straight out of Compton. They're not staying in Compton like they used to.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I remember one night Patrice O'Neill did the Jimmy Fallon program, and he just starts talking about how afraid he was. He starts talking to the Roots about how scary that first album was.
That's so
by
funny.
NWA.
Now, what year is that?
Is that an 89, a 90, something like that? The year Straight Outta Compton came out. That, this is like a year earlier when hip hop used to sound like this. Well, my name is Jay, and I'm here to say,
yo, yo, yo.
And we're like, what harmless music? And everyone's dressed so colorfully.
88.
And then, seriously, it's like the Fat Boys were 2 years earlier. And all you're saying, like, uh-oh. Who's this very Ice Cubed?
Rip, rap, ribbity-doo.
Rip, rap, rip, rip, boo.
When I was a kid, we had a DARE representative deputy who would come to our school and talk to us. And she would talk about things that were dangerous to us, which just made us really interested in the things that she talked about. Everything she said sounded cool and exciting, and then we went forward and looked at it. And one of those things was this album.
Wow.
So we were, obviously it had come out like years before. This would have been like early 90s. And she was like, and they have a song where they say the F word to the police. Is that something cool to say? And we're like, that sounds pretty cool. And we all started being like, let's listen to we gotta find that album.
That's why you should never tell kids anything.
Passing it around like, we had made tapes for each other.
Finally, something we can enjoy.
This I can get behind.
Now, do they have anything to say fuck the teachers, or... Because that would really be good. We got a break here, but Gail, you turned me on to... Well, I'm not a true crime guy, but you got me into Jinx so bad. And then Jinx had the greatest ending of any TV show in history.
It did, and it's been incredibly insane ever since. It's been crazy.
I got a email from a gentleman who was a prosecutor in this. His name is Kevin Hines. And he says in this that a lot of people have asked him to come and talk about it, and he's turned it all down, but he wants to come on our show and talk about Robert Durst.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
He was the one who came up with Robert Durst needs to rehearse. Do you know somebody actually said that one of the newspapers put out that Robert Durst was arrested for these murders, and he's the former lead singer of Limp Bizkit.
It's so crazy. And last night I saw that Fred Durst made a T-shirt or something, and he's wearing it that just says "Not Robert."
Ugh. You should get a T-shirt that says "Not Fred." You can always get away with, like they say, don't bully. But if you point it towards Fred Durst, society is always nice to you. It's a sad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boogie says, does anyone mention Alanis Morissette? Her first album was all hits. Boogie, look into it.
It's not her first album.
She did a Canadian album. If you woke up in time, you would have known that. Set your alarm clock a little earlier So we're gonna have him back. We're gonna have him in this morning and talk a little. Robert Durst, have you lost your obsession with it, or are you in the same place?
I have not. I have not lost my obsession with it. And I feel like the world is catching up to the obsession. Like now all, friends and coworkers, all of a sudden they're talking about it. I was like, yeah, I've been talking about it this whole time, trying to get you all involved. But now I feel like I hear people talking about it everywhere. I hear people in restaurants. I hear people on the subway talking about it. I think
they're a little late.
Yeah.
I like the way the other news channels just feel like they can take it away from HBO. And they'll just like ABC will do 20 minutes on it. You're like, that's... And now, who knows where the trial is going to play. All right, so we will be back with one of the prosecutors, I guess from Westchester, Bestchester, Mr. Kevin Hines, to talk about Robert Durst and how they let him slip through their fingers. It's Bennington.
This is Bennington, Opie Radio, XM 103, Sirius 206.
It is time for you to Apple and Friends.
The Mighty Mighty Pretenders. You better stop suffering now.
Stop.
What a great song. What a great band.
So good.
That was all part of our debut albums, but now let's get back into the TV show, real life drama, that is Jinx, the weird, wild history of Mr. Robert Durst. We got a gentleman who was and still is, I believe, a prosecutor in Westchester, where I guess they failed to prosecute him for his wife disappearing.
Yeah, I think that they were not able to completely lock it down, and I think this was probably around the same time that the second murder occurred, is when they were reopening that.
The Galveston murder?
No, the Susan Berman murder.
Wait, the Susan Berman was before Galveston?
Mm-hmm.
But didn't show up that way in the movie because...
Yeah, like it was another backwards. Yeah.
All right, good call. Kevin Hines is going to be here. Is he ready to come by in? All right, from the Jinx, HBO.com for more information on the Jinx. Let's bring in prosecutor Kevin Hines. Kevin Hines in studio with us, and you brought a lot of your legal papers. Kevin, explain to everybody what exactly your position is.
So, back in 2001, I was asked by Ginny Pirro, who's the district attorney of Westchester County, to take over the investigation of Kathleen Durst's disappearance. And that began an odyssey of a bunch of years of me figuring out who Robert Durst was and trying to find out, if he actually killed his wife.
See, for a lot of us, we don't know exactly. When you guys aren't in court, we don't know how much you're still pursuing cases.
Yeah.
So when you have a case like that, which I guess would have been almost a cold case by the time you got it, how much of your thinking does that take up?
Well, I mean, she disappeared in 1982. Right? So the original case was investigated by the New York Police Department because they thought that she had made it back into Manhattan. When you get a case like that, that's a cold case. It's like 18 years later now, 19 years later when I got it. It's basically just a box of dusty files.
Right.
And so you take it into your office, you break it down, you start looking to see what you have, you try to find if witnesses are still around or available, and you do your best to try to put it back all together. It's like a puzzle. And our main task was to try to figure out where she was before she disappeared and where possibly she could have gone after she disappeared. And we did that by following a lot of the phone records, a lot of the testimony of other people who had been interviewed by the detectives, and trying to talk to Durst and his family, which was unsuccessful ultimately.
Because there's this bubble around them.
Well, I mean, at the time, Robert Durst was still represented by counsel because in 1982, when the detectives were trying to interview him again for a fourth time, he retained counsel. So nobody could talk to him since then. And when I picked up the case later, he still had counsel. The family itself, the Durst organization, is an extremely powerful family in New York City.
Yeah.
Now, when you inherited this case, did you feel like there was a lot left uncovered?
It seemed to me when I first got it, I knew nothing about it. I mean, in '82, I was in college. And I thought, obviously, since it was being given to me, the district attorney wanted something done. But when you look at a case like that, the worst thing you can do is go after somebody who is not guilty, right?
Right.
And because it's just not something that we try to do. I mean, it's hard enough to convict guilty people. Convicting innocent people is much harder. But, what I thought was it was very suspicious that he had reported his wife missing 5 days after she was missing. That's what smacked me immediately. And once I started looking into the case and being able to figure out and build where he was every day since she disappeared, it became more and more suspicious. So that's when I really, I had an investigator with me. It was the district attorney said you can pick whatever investigator you wanted, and I picked a former Bronx homicide detective, Eddie Murphy, who was he's in the doc too, but he was just, a go-getter. And together we tried to uncover it we had other investigators also.
But do you say to each other, okay, we can't cross a line, we can't mess this up, because he's a powerful family?
I mean, that immediately you understand that he's represented by good counsel, so you don't want to mess it up. Number two, it's going to be a gigantic press case, right? And that's unfortunately in the criminal justice system, that means something. If, everyone's going to be looking at you and your boss and making sure you do everything correct. And so that's where the pressure, I guess, is amped up from a regular case where nobody really knows about, nobody's writing about, nobody cares.
Right. If this, if you look back on this and you say if Robert Durst was a truck driver and his wife had disappeared and he waits 5 days and he lied about being with the neighbor, whatever, the cops are going to be on him much harder than in this case.
Yeah, I mean, he when you read the file, he walks into the police department on Friday evening, right? She's disappeared on Sunday night. Walks in Friday evening. He had called there on Thursday to say, hey, how do I report somebody missing? And they said, well, you have to come and make a missing persons report. And he shows up on Friday, so a full day later, and he makes the report. And the first thing he says, the first thing in the detective's notes is, from prominent family, Durst.
Wow.
And so immediately I know from looking at that, even years and years later, that the detective involved with the case struck he knew that, it was something that he had to be careful with. The interesting thing is that there were things that probably should have been done early on that would have helped in the 1982. I mean, the first thing, again, that your wife goes missing, she's missing for a couple days at that point. You don't report it for 5 days later. Right away, he should have been all over that. But, the fact that he was from a prominent family, I said in the documentary, the interesting thing about the file is there is no calls from the mayor's office. There's no, there's nobody is looking at the case and saying, this guy's from a prominent family. This woman is the daughter-in-law of one of the most powerful people in Manhattan. So it's absent that, which to me was always strange. Yeah. So either there were calls being made and not documented, or there weren't calls being made, and the detectives at that point took that to mean something. You know, this guy, Seymour Durst, was very good friends with the mayor at the time, Ed Koch.
Mm-hmm.
His daughter-in-law is missing. There's not one piece in the file of, you know, downtown's interested. You know,
Yeah.
the police commissioner called. Nothing. And that's what really made me think that, you know, something was not right when I looked at that. And Murphy said the same thing. He was like, this is so strange.
But yeah, go ahead.
Also, the first time around with the case, it seemed like a lot of things were documented but not followed up. Like the neighbor saying that he had a drink with the neighbor, but he didn't, in fact. And also the doorman who there was an idea that he had seen her and then he had never. Was there just a lack of follow up on the initial?
You know, it's always hard to look at an investigation and point fingers on what went on.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you, though, that there are, you know, certain things that you would have wanted to be followed up on. Certainly him, you know, he does so many weird things when he first shows up. So he waits 5 days to report her missing. He then, you know, tells the detective this story about having a drink with the neighbor and calling her from home. And that's how he supposedly knew that she got into the city. And almost immediately, we know, and the detective knew, he never had a drink with the neighbor.
Yeah.
And he never called home. There was no phone records that showed that he called from South Salem to Manhattan. And so immediately, your crime scene can shift at that point. You know, one of the reasons when you have a crime scene problem is that everyone thought in the beginning, because of what the potential defendant told us, the crime scene was going to be in Manhattan because she supposedly got back. But if you pull the phone records, if you look at the phone records from that apartment, she makes no outgoing calls at all. And she's somebody who, if you look at the phone records from the week before, she's on the phone all the time. And all of her friends say she's on the phone all the time. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing that could have been done was they could have dumped the phone records and find out were any calls made in, were any calls made out. And then you could have determined, you know, maybe she didn't get home, right? Eddie Lopez was the name of the doorman who told the detectives originally that, yes, I saw her come home. She came home at around 11 o'clock. Turns out that pulling the employment records or the schedule that day would have showed that Eddie Lopez wasn't working that day. So immediately he should have known that Eddie Lopez was probably taken care of in some way to say that because he was not working. And when his own investigators then do their own investigation back in 82, they find the right doorman. And the doorman says, no. Our detectives, you know, not mine, but in 1982, never found the right doorman. They never went and followed up. They took it at face value that this guy, Eddie Lopez, says he was working. He says she came home. We knew she came home. It's going to be a situation where the crime scene is in Manhattan someplace. And that was the fatal flaw in the 82 investigation. Because if you believe that she's in Manhattan and you believe that she's killed in Manhattan, no one's looking in South Salem.
Right.
And that's where, you know, I believe that's where he killed her.
But for that to happen was, you know, obviously it's somewhat shoddy, but I always thought that if something happens to the wife, the first suspect is the husband.
Right.
Is that just a cliche, or is that
No, I
true?
mean, certainly, you know, since I've been in that business, and I'm not in that business anymore, but certainly when, you know, since I was in that business, yes. In 82, it's a little bit different, right? So you read the reports, and you see that Struck, the detective, is saying things like, they had marital problems. There was some physicality in the relationship. There was some reports that, you know, he may have beat her up. And it wasn't like, you know, now we would be like, this is definitely the guy, right? But back then it seems like, you know, it wasn't that much. And you talk to witnesses about that in that era, they were like, he used to smack his wife around. It's no big deal, you know? But unfortunately back then it wasn't that. I mean, she had gone to the hospital a month before she disappears because he whacked her and she had an abrasion on her face. And Struck knew that pretty early on. So there were a lot of things that should have been total red flags, right? Mm-hmm. And they weren't, unfortunately. And
because it was the 80s. It was the early 80s, and this whole place was nuts. It was just insane up here.
I mean, the pictures that are in this file of them partying at different places, they were big into Studio 54 and all that stuff. And there was certainly, a lot of cocaine going on all over.
Right.
Everyone talked about these parties that they were having and how, there would be these fights at the parties, and that Bobby was a violent guy, and sometimes he would punch people out and stuff like that. But I mean, yeah, it was a crazy time. I mean, I was in college at the time, but I remember going into the city and seeing some crazy shit going on. But,
yeah. Going to the city took a certain amount of courage. You know what I mean? Like I remember when people would really be like, okay, take off your jewelry or by the time we get out of the tunnel, or they will beat us up and take it from us.
Yeah.
So when you got the case and then he started to pop up, what was the next thing? Was it the L.A. murder or the Texas murder?
Yeah, so I mean, the way the timeline goes, and I got the case a little bit later. What happened was, so Joey Becerra, who was the trooper, so the case is totally cold, right?
Yeah.
Joey Becerra is this state trooper, real go-getter type guy, and he arrests a guy who's weenie whacking in his car. And when he arrests that guy up in Westchester, the guy, he's interrogating him on other stuff because that's what good detectives do. And he says, I can tell you where Kathy Durst's body's buried. And Joey didn't know who Kathy Durst was. So he then finds the file and he starts looking at it. And it turns out that, this guy is saying it's buried on Douglas Durst, the brother's, estate. They figured out that this guy was probably a lot of full of shit at the time. So they kind of put it away. But that, this Joey now having the file is what reopened the case. So he started doing his own investigation, and he brought it to the Westchester DA's office. They assigned a bunch of other assistant DAs, and at the time I had not gotten to the DA's office yet. I was still in my own private practice representing drug dealers. So what happened was that the case, they start working up the case, and it starts hitting the papers. And how that hit the papers is still a bone of contention. Nobody knows how that was leaked. But as a result of that leak, Susan Berman, the person who we believe knew everything about Bobby killing his wife in '82, ends up dead in L.A. She's shot in the back of the head. No forced entry. Doors are open. There's a note that shows up, the famous cadaver note. And L.A. begins their investigation. Sometime later, Bobby then disappears, and he goes into hiding in Galveston, where he rents an apartment as a woman, a mute woman. He dresses up and hides himself there, and then about 6 to 8 months later, he kills Morris Black, his neighbor. Chops up his body, throws it in the bay, and goes on a 6-week odyssey because he makes bail, right? He gets arrested. They don't know who he is. They believe that he's just some, transient. He makes bail because it was something he could do because he had so much money, and he goes on a 6-week odyssey where he just roams the country before getting arrested for stealing the sandwich in Pennsylvania.
Unbelievable. And then some people are like, oh, he's so smart and intelligent. And you're like, half of the stuff is like madness. Yeah. The other stuff is money gets you out of things. Like I think his lawyers have been pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Ronnie, he's a huge pothead. I mean, it's like we all went to college with these guys who wake up, they wake and bake, and then they're like, oh man, I forgot to do, like, that's who he is. And he's a list maker too. So like when we have all these lists of him like writing stuff down around the time Kathy disappears, like town dump, like shovel, just weird lists. And and every time I used to tell people all the time that, they were like, how did he get caught in that? I'm like, the dude was stoned. I mean, he was just every time he does something stupid, I'm like, yeah, he was probably just, I know that dude, right? I was roommates with the guy. I'd be like, huh? Spicoli, right? Yeah. I mean, he had a lot of that. And when you listen to when he was in Pennsylvania jail, they taped all of his interviews and all of his telephone calls and all of his, every time he talked to people. And so I had to listen to like hundreds of hours of him rambling on like you see him in the Jenks. And it's like, okay, now I get this guy. He's just like, huh? But, he got away with 3 murders.
3
murders.
It's crazy. And I mean, and money has to buy you that. I mean, that has to, because you're right. He doesn't seem like this intelligent, like perfect crime kind of guy.
Yeah, it's not like the Susan Berman murder was certainly planned because he had the plan flying out there, driving down from Trinidad all the way to L.A. There's some planning involved, and again, the lists, I think, help him with the planning, but certainly having the money to do all that, right? Having the money to hire the best lawyers, number one, but also, he can, when you look at his American Express bill, it's like, $1,300, back in 2001, $1,300 to buy a class, first class ticket right away, right? I mean, he's somebody who can pick up the phone. I need and just jump on a plane. You know, your average criminal, you know, has to do a little bit more planning. But he flew all over the country, anytime he wanted.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but was it that when around the time that you hopped on the case was when you discovered the phone calls from Jersey?
Yeah,
the collect phone calls.
So we had done there was a bunch of phone dumps done back in '82, and so we had all that information, but it was really good investigation done by Eddie Murphy, really, that said, look, you know, there are these collect phone calls, and he interviewed people who were working with the Durst organization at the time, and they said that there were two people who called collect. One was Bobby, and one was Seymour. Mm-hmm. And we knew that Seymour probably wasn't in New Jersey at the time, so we were able to determine that, or it was our understanding that was probably Bobby.
Yeah.
And those calls were made on Tuesday. So if you look at the timeline, she disappears Sunday night. He says he puts her on the train. That's bullshit, right? Monday is when we have him going to different convenience stores, buying stuff that you would buy to get rid of a body, and him making his lists. And then Tuesday is when we have the calls down in Ship Bottom, where he's made 3 collect calls back to the Durst organization. And everyone tells us that the Durst organization at the time, Bobby's the only one who makes collect calls other than Seymour. And Bobby admits that on the Jenks, right? And then he's got some weird, wild story that he says, like, oh, there was some other guy down there. That I mean, it's hilarious to watch that.
Right.
Bizarre, right? So, so we kind of put him there, right? Wednesday, we have him buying brand new boots. And what's interesting about that, Murphy found this receipt of him buying these new boots, and they tell us at the Durst organization that he shows up Wednesday morning and his boots are all sandy and shitty, and so that's why he buys new boots probably. And there's some kind of meeting at the Durst organization that we could never break, we could never figure out and get. Back in 2002, we would threatening people with grand jury. We're going to go to the grand jury on this, and you're going to have to come in and tell us, what happened during this meeting. And then nobody would help us. And for other reasons, we didn't go into the grand jury, and the case again went, cold. Thursday, so Wednesday, then he goes back to the apartment. He's basically making telephone calls out of that apartment. Thursday, he is back up in South Salem, probably still cleaning up because he knows he has to report her missing. He calls the cops, the precinct, and tries to report her missing from South Salem. We have that on the phone records. And then and one of the things that always, I wanted this case to go to trial because I was going to say, look, your wife goes missing. In his own words, he says, I know by Wednesday that she's missing. You don't report her missing till Friday afternoon?
Yeah.
And he says at some point, I got into the city early Friday, but then I had some business to attend to, so I didn't get to the detectives until 5 o'clock. It's bizarre, right? Nobody would do that in their right mind. But that's when he reports her missing, and they take a statement, and he goes on his way. And then it. So you would have loved to take in this, and even with everything that you had, you would have loved. Well, at that point, by the time I got involved, he was, we knew that he killed Susan Berman, although L.A. was not moving on that case for their own reasons. He had, when he gets arrested for the Morris Black case, which was huge national news, he also went to trial in that case, right? And he beat that case. And I knew at that point, this guy's got the worst pretrial publicity of any person I've ever met, right? Mm-hmm. So my thought was, even if our case is slim, the jury, you tell the jury you can't consider all the stuff that you've seen about this guy. But we had, some good stuff. People were outraged that this guy cut up a body and got away with it. So that was my thought, that a jury pool would understand who he was. And I felt that we had put together a case that was strong because we had that timeline that was this is when she goes missing. We know she's not in Manhattan because of the phone records. Mm-hmm. We now know that she never got to the apartment because of the doorman. And we know that he does all of these strange things that somebody who is guilty would do during that week. And I thought it was circumstantial, certainly, but I think a really good circumstantial case. But look, it was, back then, talking a bunch of years ago now, I was psyched. I thought it was going to be great. So who keeps you from doing it? Well, so there was a meeting, and it's been reported, between Jeanine Pirro, who's the district attorney at the time, and Douglas Durst, the brother, right? And that meeting takes place around the time when we're making the decision whether or not to go to the grand jury. And Murphy and I had presented the case to the district attorney and her people, and and recommended that we go to the grand jury. And one of the reasons for that was that we wanted to have people under oath talk about a lot of different things, not the least of which this meeting on Wednesday. And we had some really, really serious discussions with the Durst attorneys, not Robert, but Douglas's, because we were reaching out to them saying, come tell us this. There's no reason for you to hide this, But they hid behind their attorneys. And so the way you get around that is you institute a grand jury, and then you put the cover-ups in the grand jury, and they either tell the truth or they lie. And if you can prove they lie, you indict them for perjury. After that meeting with Douglas Durst, and I don't know what happened at that meeting, it's been reported, in the newspapers what Jeanine Pirro says happened, and it's been reported what Douglas Durst says happened, but she came back and said, keep digging. You don't have enough to go forward. And then we thought that was strange, and then we kept going, and then, truth be told, I had some issues with alcohol at the time, and I drove a car off a road and got fired. So that kind of ended my involvement in the case. But Murphy kept at it on his own. But we're talking years and years and years later, and of nothing happening until Jarecki, comes along and decides to make this documentary.
But your gut tells you that the Durst family was part of the cover-up.
I mean, look, I know that they did not help at all in '82. I know that when I was calling them to ask them to come in to talk to us, to help us, that they did not help us, and that they had lawyers call us and tell us to stop. I know that at some point Jeanine Pirro and Douglas Durst had a meeting, and that I was told that we can't go to the grand jury yet. I mean, to me, to watch Douglas Durst now say, "Oh, I'm relieved that it's happened.
Right.
I'm relieved that my brother's locked up." I mean, bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Could have locked him up in 2000 if you told us the truth. Could have locked him up in '82 if you told us the truth, in my view. Now, he's going to say what he's going to say, but he's never helped prosecution at all.
Never helped the filmmakers either in Jenks.
Nope.
But what could he have possibly had on the prosecutor? What could he have possibly said?
Look, at the time, Jeanine Pirro's career is public knowledge, right? She was the district attorney of Westchester County. She ends up running against Hillary Clinton for a little bit of time as a U.S. Senator. That campaign blows up. She then turns around and decides to run for Attorney General against Andrew Cuomo, who's now the governor. And that campaign blows up. She had ambitions. She was very good friends with George Pataki. George Pataki is someone who was friends with real estate at the time. There was certainly, interesting things going on. When Jarecki made the movie, All Good Things, there's a scene in the movie where the district attorney character meets with the brother of the Ryan Gosling character. And as a result of that, the investigation is quashed. I was there. I can't say that, I was told why it went down. I can't say why she told us to keep digging rather than, institute the grand jury. But I can say that we were very forceful on the investigative team to say, we're going to bring you in, Douglas Durst. We're going to bring your wife in. We're going to bring your kids in. We're bringing everybody in. And we're going to put you in the grand jury. And, did that make him, say, screw this guy, I'm going to go talk to his boss? Maybe. And what happened at that meeting, I don't know. The interesting thing is it's a January 1st article in the newspaper, in the Times, where that meeting was finally admitted to. Because for the longest time, people were like, oh, there was no Douglas Durst and Jeanine Pirro never really. And when the movie came out, it was said, oh, that scene never took place. Well, Douglas Durst, in that interview on January 1st of this year, says, yes, I met with Jeanine Pirro. And when I met with Jeanine Pirro, she told me that I think your brother killed his wife. He's too stupid to do it by himself. And I think you probably helped. Jeanine Pirro says, yes, there was a meeting that I arranged with Douglas Durst. But that's not what happened at that meeting. And I'm not going to tell you what happened at that meeting. So I felt vindicated at that point. I was like, okay, finally this meeting, this secret meeting, people are saying it happened. Because I was kind of out there, the only one screaming about this secret meeting.
Well, the fact is, she presents herself and everybody else presents her as like she's this attack dog on this. But you're not feeling that way.
Well, look, certainly, she flew all over the country when this guy was, getting locked up everywhere, right? And she she loves publicity, right? So that's no secret about her. So to show up in another, my father was district attorney of Brooklyn for 25 years, right? The man never left Brooklyn to go to another jurisdiction and say, well, we're going to, he's been arrested there, but we think he did something in Brooklyn. I mean, it was insane. I never saw that. No prosecutor ever saw a district attorney travel to another jurisdiction. And we would get calls from the other jurisdictions saying, keep your boss out of it.
Right.
What's going on here? And because she was stealing the spotlight. She's very attractive. She's very good in the front of the cameras. The press loves her. She's, accessible. And the reality is that, she ends up stealing the show. And she did that in Pennsylvania. She did that in Galveston. She became the issue in Galveston. When he went to trial, the issue was she was doggedly after him. And that's why he believed nobody would believe me when it was self-defense. So I had to cut up the body because Jeanine Pirro was in the newspaper saying that I did this. I mean, the reality was there weren't that many articles at the time.
Right.
And Texas, Murphy and I got on the phone with them the weekend that Durst was testifying and said, we'll send you all. There's no front page articles of Durst, reopening of the case. There was a article here and an article there, but they didn't use that on cross-examination, and he crushed them. He crushed them down there.
Yeah,
and DeGarren is a wizard. He's amazing, and they did a great job of taking a case where the guy killed the guy. The head's missing, right?
Right.
So there's no way that, he says he shot him in the face during this struggle, but we probably think that he killed Morris Black, the same way he killed Susan Berman, which is one in the back of the head. But since the head's missing, he can say whatever he wants because that's where the bullet was, right?
Right.
And they never got it. There was this strange thing where all the body parts are recovered except the head. This guy knew.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not letting them find the head. So the head is someplace. We don't know where it is, but I'm sure there's a bolt in the back.
I even wonder how much of that was luck. You know what I mean? Like maybe the head just floated off.
Yeah.
Because they called it jinx, but the luck that he had so many places.
Yeah.
But you can sit down as an attorney and appreciate that kind of defense. You can do that as
the funny thing was, so we were going full force with the investigation still, and we were making a lot of headway. And then this Texas thing comes up, right? And everybody in my office, except for Murphy, was saying, "Oh, you're done. He's going to go to jail forever, and this case is done. Wrap it up." And I was like, I guess, but he's going to say something. Like, there's going to be a defense. He's paying these lawyers lots of money. They're really good. And there's going to be a defense. So I think that we're probably going to convict him down there. It's going to be great. He's going to go to jail forever. My case will go away. But let's just keep it open just in case. And once we started watching, because the case was on TV, some of it, it was like, oof, DeGarren's making a lot of headway here. And, the truth be told, when you have a dead person and a defendant, and the defendant is willing to tell a story, you got nobody saying that didn't happen, right? And so his story is that, we would go out shooting together. I knew we had guns. I walk in my apartment. He's there. He's got the gun. I grab him. We struggle. I mean, the chopping up of the body is the stuff he had to worry about, really. And he did that by pointing the finger at Jeanine Pirro, which they did a great job of, but was fabricated. You say what you want about Jeanine. It's not true what he said on the stand. And the fact that they didn't go after him on that was, we called down there at one point, right? We're telling him, look, here's a bunch of more stuff you can cross him on. And they were like, Kevin, let me tell you something. He chopped up this body. We're in Texas. I don't know what would happen up in New York, but in Texas, this jury is going to convict him.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, good luck. And that's what happened. And I remember I was coming from a friend's funeral, a friend's mother's funeral, and back then it was beepers, right? My beeper goes off. 911. So I pull off to the side of the road, and I get on the phone, and it's Pirro. They fucking acquitted him. He's going to come kill me now. And, there was this gun charge that they still had. I'm like, no, they're not releasing him. Don't worry. We got some time because the feds had him on a gun charge because when he was arrested in Pennsylvania, he had a gun in the car. And so we had some more time. But then that's when we really geared up.
But her first thought was, I'm in danger. He's coming for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, when he was on his 6-week odyssey, he was in Westchester County. He went to his brother's place in Westchester County. He went to the old house where we think he killed her in South Salem. it was obvious from his testimony down in Texas later that he was obsessed with the fact that he felt that Jeanine Pirro was out to get him.
He literally gets obsessed with these strange.
Yeah, and he makes enemies lists, and they were, Jeanine was on the enemies list. Deborah Lee Sheridan, his wife, was on the enemies list. It's so bizarre.
Well, do you think there's a chance in L.A. the same thing can happen as happened in Texas?
What's interesting, and I've talked to people about. I mean, I've had like a lot of press inquiries and stuff, and I've done nothing. And the only reason I'm here is because I love you, and I think that you give me joy every day. And I'm like, what can I do for this guy? I'm going to reach out. It's true. I mean, I listen every day, and it's like, okay. But what I tell my friends who ask me is this. He's got a gun charge in New Orleans now, right? And that gun charge in New Orleans could be taken federally. And if that's taken federally, that's a 10-year minimum, right? He's going to die in jail if they do it that way. The interesting thing about the L.A. case is that you have a prosecutor who's supposedly very good. I don't know the man, but supposedly very good, very thorough. And he has a case right now that will be the OJ of the 2000s.
Right.
And so there's a lot of ego involved in something like that. And does he want to bring the case back to L.A. as fast as possible and try the Susan Berman murder case, which is an old, cold case, certainly some interesting facts. I mean, we helped them put together, or Murphy actually helped them put together this timeline, which shows him, and you see it in the Jenks, how he's out in L.A. and he's out in California, which is a big state, and he goes back and forth to we think do the murder, and the cadaver note, and you have the bathroom stuff. I think at the end of the day, it's a good case, and I think given, again, his pre-trial publicity, he probably gets convicted. But it's not an easy case. And so if I was the prosecutor, I'd probably want to let the New Orleans stuff go on. But DeGuerin, who's, again, a wizard and smart and somebody who, I wouldn't mind representing me if, God forbid, I got in trouble, is going to want to bring it back to L.A., first, because of the publicity, DeGuerin will be, right, king in Hollywood, right? They would eat him up. But also, I think that's the weaker case, right? The gun case is the gun case. He's got a gun, they arrest him, you're done. The LA case, it's an interesting case in that, if you wipe away the pretrial publicity, if you wipe away the stuff in the bathroom, because I don't know if that's admissible. I haven't really taken a deep look at that in California law, but let's say that's not. It's a rough case. I mean, you have him there. You have him possibly driving back and forth. You have the cadaver note, which is interesting, but you have to know something about the cadaver note. They say now that this is definitely, his handwriting, right? And he does admit some things in the documentary that shows that it was. Years before, when he was in jail in Texas waiting trial, they did an analysis of the cadaver note. And California police came back and said, this is not his handwriting. This is Niles Brennan's handwriting, who was Susan Berman's manager at the time. So that they're going to have to deal with that too if they come back, which is that your own expert said it wasn't his. Now he's kind of admitting, that he didn't admit that he sent the cadaver note, but when you now have the exact same lettering on both, it's more. They didn't have that second Beverly Hills misspelling back when he was in Texas. But there's some definitely bad police work done on that part of it, which I think could be problematic. It would be an amazing trial. It would be an amazing trial in L.A. But, whether or not it happens, we'll see. I mean, it seems to me that he's very ill.
He does seem pretty fragile now, right?
Yeah, he does.
Well, Gail, is there anything left for you? I mean, you're the one that got me. I'm not even a true crime guy.
Okay.
But this story, I don't know what it was about that, but by the time it was over, I felt like, I'd like to do your work. You know what I mean? Like, if you ever got into that thing that it was amazing. But what about for you, Gail?
I don't know. I think the thing that really strikes me right now that I'm just talking to you that's so shocking is, considering you guys were building such a solid case, why he wasn't more closely looked at in LA the first time around. It's just even without this note.
Okay. So we get out to LA. Murphy and I go out to LA with all the information that we've put together to try to get them interested in him. And they tell us that when we first get there, they tell us that we think that Niles Brenner, the manager, had something to do with her death. And they were concerned, they told us, that since we were building this case against Niles Brenner, that we'd eventually have to turn it over to Durst's lawyers if we arrest Durst, and we're going to look bad that we were looking at the wrong guy. And, again, 2002, OJ is still fresh in everybody's mind. Sure. They look terrible in OJ, right? The detectives. And, there was no physical evidence. There was no, we had this circumstantial case of him. Yes, he was definitely in California. Yes, he probably drove down. It wasn't that strong of a case, though. Yeah. So I don't blame them for not doing it. We tried to get them to do it because we were really interested in showing this guy for what he was. And we felt, certainly as people who were in the case after Susan died, that the fact that it leaked to the press, that law enforcement leaked it in some way, that you feel some responsibility for her death. Because if he doesn't know that we're re-looking into the 1982 case, certainly he's not killing his best friend who we think knew about it, right? So you felt, at least for the law enforcement community as a whole, if this didn't get leaked to the press, this woman probably is not dead. And that kind of always stuck with, me and Murphy and the other
even though you know that she wasn't an innocent person in this, she could have stepped up years before if she knew something. Yeah,
I look, obviously, she was involved. At least we believe that she was involved in Kathleen's disappearance. Makes her a piece of shit. But does she deserve to get shot in the back of the head? In her shitty house, and it was sad.
Yeah,
the way she died, it was. So she's not the innocent victim, but you still feel like if you as law enforcement doing your job well, you're not getting somebody killed. And in some ways, the fact that leaked to the press, is what set him off to go. This is what we believe that set him off to go kill her, because she obviously knew something. And we would have loved to talk to her about that, but she was gone at that point, so we couldn't. And we were just trying to help LA at that point. And they were great guys and smart investigators, and they certainly wanted to take a case. It's just that there was no smoking gun in that case.
And like we said, if he wasn't rich, they'd feel more comfortable to go after him. I mean, the real point of this story is, if you're going to be crazy and you're going to be a sociopath, it really helps to be rich. You know what I mean? Have a lot of money around you. And the fact is that you could just go through life like this, half a mad dog. Seriously.
The dude does anything he wants, before he gets rearrested, anything he wants all the time. He got arrested with the latex mask, and
it's unbelievable.
Think about this insanity, right? Going to Cuba, maybe.
Right.
You got that money, you got somebody who's willing to help you. Yeah, you can do whatever you want, and you beat the criminal justice system. In a case that 99.99999% of people get convicted of killing Morris Black. They all plead guilty, right? At that point, when you did that, this guy beats it. It makes the whole system look terrible.
It does.
And that's something that that's sad. And people say all the time, like, when I was a criminal defense attorney, like, how could you become a criminal defense attorney? How could you do that? I'm like, yeah, wait till you get fucking locked up and you need to call me.
Absolutely.
Right? Or your kid gets locked up. And it would happen. Like, it'd be a cocktail party, some guy tried to give me a piece of shit about, like, being a defense attorney, and then 3 weeks later that kid gets locked up. I'm like, oh yeah, how do you feel now? The bottom line is, if you can pay, you can play that system.
Right.
You can definitely play that system.
Well, I think that no matter who's in front of a jury, you almost feel for them. Like, if I'm on a jury, you really have to prove that before I want to take away somebody's freedom, or I want to send them away. So I always, the fact that there are attorneys that are just great at what they do sometimes can make you pissed off, and other times that makes you go, yeah, this is a great country that you could go out and...
It's the idea of shadow of a doubt. I think that it's just too much sometimes for people to bear, to ruin someone's life or to change someone's life.
You saw that Texas jury. There were some people that were crushed over that. And the other thing that sometimes we think of, cops and prosecutors by certain things, but when that Galveston cop was crying, and you're like, yeah, this shit matters to him,
Yeah. Those are the people you want on your team, right? The guys who really care about the case. And it's I was in the system for 15 years, both as a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney, and those guys are, they're a handful. I mean, there's really not that many who care that much.
Yeah.
And so, he did, Murphy did. There were some good investigators who wanted this to go down the right way. They were outgunned. I mean, and again, going back to the money, if you can pay for somebody like he didn't just hire DeGuerin, right? He hired the other guy who was also the top. So they had two top guys in Texas as his lawyers. I mean, these guys, DeGuerin did a lot more cooperation with the Jinx, so you see him a lot more. The other dude was great too, though. I mean, I remember watching his stuff, and they were just outgunned, and they did a great job.
And picking a jury that they know would be great, and then Galveston prosecutor, probably the amount of money he had for that case was almost nothing.
And the amount of money he made, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how much money are you making as a prosecutor? You don't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of times there are some people who stay, but, sometimes you can't afford it as a prosecutor. And, jury consultants, that you can hire from the defense, they hire jury consultants on the case. When you watch the verdict and you see Bob, like, when he's like, did she say not guilty? Did they?
Yeah.
Right? There's like 9 attorneys around him, right? Hugging him, touching him. It's like, well, how much that cost,
Anything that the Jinx got wrong, or anything that you thought that they missed?
No, I mean, the funny thing, about the Jinx is that, I'm in the Jinx from an interview that took place 10 years ago. Right. So Jarecki reaches out to me when he's making the movie with Ryan Gosling, All Good Things. And he's like, hey, I'm going to make this movie out of the blue, right? I knew him from Capturing the Freedmans, which at the time was my favorite documentary, just amazing. And he reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm making this movie, this feature film, and I understand you're the guy to see. Can we talk about it? And I knew him from Capturing the Freedmans. I'm like, dude's my idol, right? I'll do anything for him. This is why I'm here with you. So I was like, okay. So we went to New York, and I told him basically a lot of the stuff that we had learned and had this file. And he wrote the script, and the script went. And towards the end, he was like, can I put you on tape? And I'm like, why? He was like, well, DVD stuff, extra stuff. And I honestly was uncomfortable about it because I'm just... But he had been such a good guy, and we had gotten along. I'm like, all right, we'll do an interview, whatever. So we did this interview, which ends up in the Jinx. So go to the premiere of the movie. It was very nice, and all that stuff. And then I don't hear from him. A couple years later, he calls me up, and he's like, I got Bob to agree to do an interview with me. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? He goes, yeah, he's going to do an interview. What do you think I should ask him? So we talked a little bit. I didn't help him all that much, but I did what I could. Mark Smerling's a very nice guy, his producing partner. So we talked a little bit. They were out in L.A. I met them because I live in L.A. now. I met them and helped them a little bit, and then I didn't hear anything, right? And now I'm in the TV business now, right? I write for TV, and so I have an agent and and stuff, and I get a call from a friend of mine who says, "Hey, HBO is like buying some documentary about this guy Durst. You've talked about this Durst case. What's the story?" And I'm like, "Okay." So I call up Jarecki. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, oh, yeah, we made this documentary. Bobby, talk to us. Where do you see it? And we were going to go to Sundance, but it was way too long. And so we decided to sell it to HBO. I'm like, wow, that's great, man. Congratulations. He goes, you're in it. I'm like, what do you mean I'm in it? He goes, well, remember that? I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I'm like, dude, you told me. He goes, yeah, but you signed a general release. I'm like, don't fucking lawyer me, man. I know what I signed. Okay, fine. But you didn't think to call me and say, hey, dude. So he's like, yeah, I probably should have. Sorry, you want to come to the premiere? It's at CAA. I'm like, okay. And I was nervous, Ron, because I didn't remember what I had said, right? 10 years ago. And it was around the time that, I stopped. So it was like, okay. And so I was talking to him, and I had a couple sleepless nights, and I called him back up. I'm like, dude, I'm afraid, like, am I going to get sued by people? Like, he's like, no, you look fine. Don't worry. So I go to the premiere at CAA. They show the first 2 episodes, which I'm not in, right? And I brought my wife, and my wife is a Boston girl. And Jarecki's there, and we go talk to Jarecki, hug him and all that. And my wife goes up to Jarecki and says, listen to me. You fuck my husband in this documentary, you will not have a sleepless night the rest of your life. He was like, he knew her, he had met her. But he was like, Kevin, it's going to be fine. And then we watch it, and it was fine, right? I'm a fact witness, right? Yeah. I just say this, that, and the other thing, and blah, 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 and which is fine. But again, they didn't give, I was sitting there with everybody else not knowing, right? I mean, Murphy called me up and said, make sure you watch 5 because it's going to blow your mind. And he knew about the Beverly stuff, but he wouldn't tell me. And then I watched 5, and I was like, holy shit. And then 6 was...
Got amazing, man. I mean, it's just...
Totally amazing. Rob.
The first episode, I was like, what? But by the time I got to the end of it, I mean, from a TV point of view, that it was phenomenal
Yeah.
television.
And I can't say he got anything wrong. What I've said to other people is there's just so much more to the story. I mean, there's just so much more about like what was really going on during the investigation at the time, and the other things that we were able to uncover. I mean, I listened to so many hours of tapes of this guy rambling like a lunatic. And Deborah Lee Sheridan, every time he would get close to making an admission, she would be like, Bobby, yep, Bobby, we're being taped, Bobby. And he'd be like, oh, I'm almost there.
That's the wife. And what was she thinking? I mean, that's what's going to get really weird in the next trial, I think.
Yeah.
She's going to really be exposed. Like, why?
Yeah. And, a lot of people are like, well, they have he married her to basically shut her up for the husband and wife privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, though, that privilege belongs to the person, right? So it doesn't belong to Bobby, it belongs to her. So she can flip on him anytime, and it would be fine. There's some talk that they were going to charge her with possibly helping him escape with some kind of crimes and then possibly try to flip her. She probably knows a lot. I would imagine she knows a lot. We tried to talk to her when we found out where she was. Jeanine Pirro went down and actually confronted her face to face. Again, another thing that elected district attorney would never do, but she was a bulldog on the case at times, and she went down and tried to get her to talk, but she wasn't talking. And you see her in the Jinx, and she seems to be one tough lady.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not messing around, and she's done well being Mrs. Bobby Durst, right?
Yeah, I imagine, right? Kevin Hines, thanks so much for coming in, man.
My pleasure, man.
Thank you so much.
The Jinx, to me, it just seems like this is going to be round one. By the time this, gets taken to trial, I think it's going to be the biggest case since OJ. I really do think
and I mean,
that.
we'll see what happens. I mean, it's kind of like stay tuned. It's crazy.
All right, we're going to go to break. Thanks so much for coming in, dude. I'll talk to you later on.
Crowd the plate, and he'll put one in your ear. It's Bennington on Opie Radio, XM 103, Sirius 206.
That's our house band. The Mighty Mighty Pretenders, the house band for Bennington today. And our counsel, Kevin Hines, who was just in here. Kel, there's got to be some kind of deal that we could do where we start investigating crimes.
I think that we would be great at it.
I know that we'd be great at it.
Particularly if there's a documentary made first.
Right.
We could use that as our starting point. They'll do all the research.
Yeah, that's helpful.
And then we can watch that documentary and then get our findings from that.
Well, there's something else that I feel like I'm pretty good at. I have a Rockford Files background that... And I realize that sometimes when the case looks bad, something could also happen. Maybe we'll talk to Angel and see if he's heard anything on the street.
That could change things.
Isn't it weird that I know, we haven't done the Bennington show that much, but to have that situation where you watch a show on TV, you talk about it, and the person calls and go, "Oh, I heard you guys talking about it. I'm going to be in New York. I'll stop by."
That was so wild and so cool that we were able to make that connection.
Because it's all you ever want in life. What you want, you're watching a movie or you're listening to an album and reading a book, and you're like, I wish I could just talk to that person for a second. And then you get that chance, and you're like, okay, I feel like I'm up to speed.
Thank you for clearing that up for me.
It was cool, though.
That was really cool. I was kind of in the middle of it, I was sort of daydreaming, imagining having that job, and I'm like, man, I could really do that. And then you hear 100 hours of audio, and you're like,
no, I wouldn't.
No, never mind.
Too hard for me to do.
That's too many hours for me.
I just like doing stuff that takes 3 hours, and you just make up things most of the time. I don't really like working hard at things.
And at least one of those hours we can talk about debut albums. Just the case.
Not just the case. Let me ask you something, Mr. Durst. Of all the albums that came out. Now, remember, we're talking 65 to 71. Kind of stupid stuff we do. A lot of our stuff is stupid.
It's not as important, maybe, but...
Do you think, or maybe I just found this out. So last night I told you I couldn't sleep.
Yes.
One of the problems that I had is just hearing fire engines all night. And I found out that there was a raging building fire not 100 yards from where I live.
So scary.
Yeah, you would think somebody might have warned us.
Yeah, somebody maybe just knock up, say, hey guys.
Hey, you might burn up later. Careful.
You guys should probably leave.
No.
They should have some sort of alarm system for something.
I don't want to make... I know that you never want to say that, it's good in any direction, but it'll be good news for Java Girl if that coffee shop is out of there.
It's going to be great for business.
Here's Mike in Canada.
Yeah, hey guys, I really enjoy that true crime stuff greatly, especially when you get a guest like that that's like very blunt and plain spoken and not looking for a lot of the glory in it. But I don't know, Ron, if you remember, but Opie and Anthony did an interview with Patrick Kennedy, who was the lead detective on the Dahmer case. And to my thinking, that's the best interview that those guys ever did. That guy was such a plain-spoken, real guy.
Like you said, if you find out what it's really like for someone to be stuck with that information, you know what I mean? Like it really must feel like an incredible responsibility to have the information to know that a killer could be free right now.
It's got to weigh on you, and it's got to make you feel just a tremendous amount of responsibility to do right by the victim, or just to get the truth out there. And then you've got all this red tape and stuff that you have to kind of hurdle around to get to it.
Yeah, that's got to be terrible. And I mean, when you're hearing about the meeting between the prosecutor and Durst's brother, I mean, let's face it, that Durst family's crazy even when they're not Robert Durst.
I totally believe that. Yeah, I mean, some of the points he was bringing up about, normally in a case like that, you would have somebody who is high profile with a lot of money. They've got pull. They're like, find my daughter-in-law, find my sister-in-law. That's normally the angle people with money take on something like that, and you just weren't seeing from this case. Speaks pretty loudly, I think.
Well, when the trial comes on TV, I think it's going to be major. And for all the people out there going, I don't know, I don't watch the HBO show. We just gave you a little gift. God damn it. Cherish it. Okay? Cherish it.
You've got to cherish it.
Cherish is the word I don't know if you could ever put the word cherish in a song and have it work out for you.
Cherish.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for proving a point.
Yeah.
No further questions. You may step down.
Oh.
I want to make sure I plug E-Rock's show tonight. E-Rock, I'm going to guess you got Chris coming back on this week.
No, I loved hearing that the other day. It's like every week it's Chris Elliott. No, we had to bump him one week, but that aired last week. It's on demand. You can find that. But this week I have Kevin Heffernan and Steve Lemmy from Super Troopers. They're calling to talk about their getting all the money in one day for
it was
Super Troopers
crazy.
too. Yeah. So they're going to be calling in. I also have Sean Ashmore from The Following and X-Men, and Bridget Mendler from Undateable on NBC.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
This is packed. Just packed with guests. By the way,
hope you like talking to people.
The this thing feels like The Following to me, like the guy who wrecked the plane. It just seems like something that would happen in The Following. Like if this was a movie, the guy who was flying that plane into the Alps was hypnotized and drugged by a secret organization, a.k.a. The Following. Also, I want to bring up later on today, Sam's show. Is he already out in L.A.? Is he?
He's in San Jose.
Okay, in San Jose for WrestleMania. He's doing a show tonight, 3:00 on the East, and it's ring ropes, 3 or 4. What do you want to do? I'm old school. I think 4 ring ropes is the way to go, but it changes everything.
For my generation, 3.
Yeah, I know. I understand. I get it, you know? I just don't think you had the tautness that we had earlier.
But then somebody could sit on those ropes and then you could slip under if you're like a lady.
Like a little lady.
Like a little Miss Lady.
Yeah, let Miss Elizabeth come through. And then, of course, at 10 o'clock today, it's the big hit show.
Accelerated.
I was going to call it didactylated, but that would have been crazy. It's not even a word. That's the new movie that's out that the insurgent kids are doing. Here's a movie I believe you may like. Steven Spielberg is back into sci-fi, and he's going to be doing Ready Player One. And it's been a long time, I think, since he's done, maybe AI, since he's done a pure sci-fi film.
Yeah, it's been a while for that guy. That is his bread and butter.
Well, he did War of the Worlds, too.
Was that the same? Was that before or after?
Yeah. That was after AI.
That was after.
Okay, after.
And he got a lot of slack, a lot of criticism for that, so that's why he stayed away from the genre for a while.
I mean, I know everybody makes the big deal about E.T., but I thought Close Encounters of the Third Kind was such a great movie. And when people list movies, it never gets the love. But if you look back at that, forget the fact that if you watched it, you would have thought, oh, yeah, I really could picture, aliens landing in the middle of the country. But if you just think of the weirdness of that father in that movie.
It's so great. It's so simple, too, just following the one guy from his perspective, from this very, small, weird thing. It's just, how it affects him personally. It's not what happens to the world and,
right.
How it affects him and his family. That's it.
Well, just thinking about it now, he was like our first obsessive compulsive character in a movie. He couldn't stop himself. He just I just got to keep the potatoes and stuff.
I think about it every time I eat mashed potatoes.
I think every time
mashed potatoes.
I start to sculpt with mud in my living room. But you had that, he couldn't stop himself. He was so crazy. And then he leaves his wife and children, gets on that spacecraft to leave this planet without ever saying goodbye or without even having a weird feeling about it.
Yeah.
And then the government, cover up.
And I love this song. Dun, 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 the little
Close Encounters theme. Close Encounters. These people, they felt the need to come here. Who are you folk? You're not even an American. It's great.
Such a good movie. I've got to watch it again. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, and it's a good one.
This is the other thing about that movie that was so great. I think it's the first time they showed an American family with kids with a messy house. Their house was just a mess. They had little kids. It didn't look like a beautiful, Hollywood soundstage.
Well, he does that well, or at least, he was doing that really well at the time where he had an ability to paint a picture of a family. And I think that he does it so beautifully. You see those little moments in E.T., that's such a specific, family that he created. And you see it in Jaws, the moments that you have in Brody's house with his wife and his kids. It's that's very important to him.
Yeah, I'm wondering if anyone ever even did it before. I'm really captured suburban life, the way that it felt. Poltergeist, that just really felt like you could have lived in that neighborhood. Before that, these were always scary haunted houses. Why would they even go up that road and live in that house? But this was just track homes,
And he also, I think, was I think probably his kids were young at that time. He was very tapped into the way children spoke and communicated. I felt there were a lot of things that rang really true to me when I was young about the children in all of those movies.
I think that was before he started having kids.
Oh, really?
Because he said he would have made Close Encounters differently once he became a dad.
Really?
He would have said, I would never the dad would have said something like, "Oh no, I don't need to leave."
Right.
But he was thinking like a young man. But the dad should have got on that thing.
Right.
It was perfect.
It was amazing.
Favorite Spielberg all time?
I have to say Jaws. I think I've seen Jaws more than I have seen any other film.
Every summer you watch Jaws?
Every summer, spring, winter, and fall, you mean?
All you've got to do is calls.
I was also accused by a friend that I reference Jaws once a week. And I don't think that that's true, but that's a lot of talking about Jaws if that's true, and I hope it's not.
Did it change the way that you, like when you went in the water? Because I saw it in the theater when it came out. And you can imagine, like that was the first big summer movie that the country ever had. That, and then the fact that Star Wars came out kind of ruined films after that because every film had to become a blockbuster.
A big summer blockbuster. Yeah, of course. It totally, to this day, I think about Jaws when I'm at the beach, when I'm in the water. The sound to me of being at the beach, going under the water and hearing people talk who are above water, the way that sounds through the water, I'm like, I got to get out. I'm freaking out.
That changed it for me when you're out deep enough that your legs are just dangling.
Yeah, I can't even do that.
Like
I can't.
Cheese sticks for Jaws, you know? There's like, you're never as vulnerable as when you're just floating and your legs are down. And the other thing is, because of Jaws, if I'm diving and there is a wreck with a hole in it, I won't go up too close in case a head pops out right in front of me because I don't want to drop the tooth that I have in my hand.
Pull the tooth out the size of a shot glass.
They're all gonna die.
Why didn't they look into that and say, oh yeah, this was definitely a shark attack? After that, they're like, who knows what killed that man in the boat? It was Ben Gardner's boat.
You know, amity, it means friendship. Greatest mayor in any movie ever.
Best dressed mayor, that's for sure.
Well, he had those little anchors all over his jacket. You know, here's the weirdest scene in Jaws, and I think it's early on, but Brody is walking down the beach with a kind of a gay guy in really short white shorts. I think it's right before they find the body. Did you ever look at that scene?
Yeah.
It comes out of nowhere.
I think I know someone who actually knows that guy in real life.
That guy, to me, is the next Kevin Hines. I want you to hear this and then want to come in and explain it.
Explain her shorts.
All right. Do you think, though, after E.T., we ever really had the E.T. Poltergeist summer? I don't know if I'd ever say we ever had another Spielberg movie. I guess you could say Indiana Jones still had that Spielberg-y feel about it. But after that, it's almost like he stepped away from it.
And started to go in a different
he started to try to make grown-up movies.
Yeah.
Where I'd just to say we got plenty of grown-ups.
What about Jurassic Park?
All right, good call. Jurassic Park is amazing. It was the last time I ever went to a movie and bragged about the CGI.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it was stunning as a kid. It
was stunning as an adult for me. I was like, there really are dinosaurs in this movie. I don't know how they did it, but they found an island of dinosaurs.
It's the only explanation.
Best line in any Spielberg movie. Mine is, it's all happening. Timmy.
It's all happening.
Timmy. What's up, dude?
Hey, how you doing? Ron.
What can we do for you, buddy?
What is your daughter's name? I forget.
My name? Is that what?
Yeah.
Gail?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Gail, in 2008, me and my son went up to Martha's Vineyard, something called the Jaws Fest. And if you ever get a chance to go up there, all the sites where they filmed Jaws, pretty much still intact, and it's really a cool thing to see. If you ever get up there, the bridge is still there. the house where
We
Quint.
took a little Jaws tour.
Mm-hmm.
Quint was the best, wasn't he?
Yeah. I love Quint.
All right, thanks for that Jaws tour information, Timmy.
Was that Robert Durst?
Yeah. Here's Brian. It did sound very Durst-like. Brian in El Paso.
Don't worry about my name.
How's the West Texas town of El Paso?
Oh, man, it's beautiful. It's going to get up to 80 degrees today.
Sweet.
No wind. It's amazing. You know what I watched the other day, Ron, and it was scary, and I think Spielberg did it like in a matter of 3 weeks, was Duel.
It was
Dennis Weaver.
Jaws with trucks.
Oh, it's amazing. It's still very scary. This guy, this trucker who we never see, he could be on the road right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you go and look at that, it's exactly the same as Jaws, or even worse, Jaws 2, where the truck just won't leave you alone. It just keeps coming and coming. I remember.
How about when the people just don't believe him? That was the other big point of tension is he can't get anybody to see that this guy is trying to kill him.
I know.
And those awful kids at the bus, and he's trying to get them off the road, and they're just taunting him and just demeaning him, dehumanizing him. It's a great film.
I honestly think that the reason why he got Jaws was because of that. And I also remember he did a night gallery that just totally freaked me out when I was a kid. And it was Joan Crawford who had paid to get these eyes. Like she took a living person's eyes. She was like a 1%er. And she paid, but her sight would only last for hours, like 15 or 20 hours or whatever it happened to be. And as soon as she got, and she'd been blind her whole life, and when her bandages were taken off, all the power went out in New York. And so here she is, she gets sight only for a short time. She got it through these awful means, and then it was taken away because she was just in total darkness in the city. It was insanely great.
Super scary.
Yeah. There's a picture of her.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
I'm scared already.
You should be. You should be scared of her and those eyes that she really didn't deserve. The ending song was Hungry Eyes. No one knows what it's like to be Steve Spielberg. You think everybody calls him Steve or Big Steve?
Steve. I always like when somebody knows a celebrity personally, and they either like shorten the name or lengthen the name depending on what, and it makes it sound like.
Right.
Yeah, I was talking to Steve Spielberg the other day. Oh,
Big
okay.
Steve. Stevie Spiels said something so funny to me at a party. Who was I? I was there with Dusty and Alpac. That's what I call Al Pacino, Alpac.
Big alpaca sometimes.
Yeah. Alpac. Let's go to Outback. Why are you looking at me like that, dude? Don't you play with me. Alpac. But if you ever said, "Oh, what are your favorite, directors?" You never bring up Spielberg, but he's got to be in there.
Yeah, he's got to. It just seems like an uncool thing to say, but you know what? I'll say it.
Yeah, I know, but then people are going to go, well, because of him, we got Michael Bay. Are you satisfied?
I'm not afraid to look uncool. You're uncool.
Did you like the Indiana Joneses?
Yeah. I was a kid when what's the second one? Temple of Doom came out, and I remember that everyone was all upset. The first one was better. But because I was a kid and saw that, I was like, what are you talking about? How could the first one be better than this? This is the best thing ever. I think I had seen the second one first. So to this day, I kind of like that one best because it reminds me of being a kid. It was terrifying with the bugs and the
Yeah, I think that's what their
brain.
big problem. They thought it was too terrifying for kids.
Yeah.
They actually yelled at him. These movies are supposed to be for kids.
And what about Short Round?
Yeah, Short Round was kind of considered a racist character.
Dr. John!
Dr. John!
And then that chick was his wife, right? Was Spielberg married to the blonde from that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's married to and dates who's ever in his movies.
Oh my God, is he nuts? It's my one impression, like one line impression of the blonde from Dumbledore. Oh my God, is he nuts? That's all I have for that.
That's plenty. We could actually make a vine out of that and really go places. Get people to favor our tweets.
I get a blonde wig. We need someone to play short round. Shelby could be a short round.
Yeah, what we'll do is just tape his eyes back, because I do that with them sometimes. We play a little game I like to call Lady Boy. Chris, in Jersey.
Hey, I got a question for Gail, actually.
Oh.
Gail, I know you grew up getting a nice little Carvel cake on WrestleMania Day. I want to know if you're doing that this year, and what's your favorite WrestleMania of all time?
I missed what he said. What
He
happened?
said he knows that I grew up getting a ice cream cake every WrestleMania.
That's
and
true.
what is my favorite WrestleMania of all time? Well, I hope that we're
doing it this year. Is the big cat bringing a cake over this year?
I hope we're getting an ice cream cake.
Yeah.
For old time's sake. I love it.
This one actually even lines up very close with Fez's birthday, so
I
I was
know.
thinking surprise party for him. But I would always say this. My favorite WrestleMania is the next one.
I'm always looking ahead. That felt very personal for a second. Like I almost forgot that this would be something discussed. How do you know about my ice cream cakes on WrestleMania?
Let it out, thaw for a while. Frozen right now. Now I've got everybody. I've got all the matches that we could write down. Every time Fez comes to our house, we are filling out just polls of what's going to happen.
It's great. I love it.
And you get extra points if you figure out if Pete Rose is coming back or not.
I love those crunchies on the ice cream cake.
Do you
The little
remember the
chocolate
time
crunchies.
that we went to Fez's mom's house and she had the wedding cake because Macho Man was marrying Elizabeth?
Mm-hmm.
You guys were so little.
That was very exciting. That was a great one.
And your brother lost his shit because Fez had wrestling action figures and didn't let him take one home.
It literally was the only tantrum he's ever had in his life.
It's true.
He was just heartbroken, the idea of
Leaving them behind.
Yeah, leaving Fez's toys.
And I don't know why we couldn't say yes, take some, and I'll buy them for Fez the next day. They're wrestling toys.
But that started a collection for him after that.
Well,
we
a
had to be
collection
like,
for the country.
Don't worry. You'll get some.
Don't
You'll
worry.
get some of
It's
those.
happening, I promise you. We'll have plenty of those.
Would you want to win? Would you want to win?
All right, watch me wrestle with these. Jason in Detroit.
Hey, Ron, it's Gail. My parents made me but we watched Jaws when I was about 5 years old. Then they couldn't understand my fear of water, even going into a pool, taking a bath as a child. Anything with water I was scared about until I was about 13 years old. They couldn't understand
You had
why.
every right to be.
Yeah. Pools were not exempt from the fear for some reason. It's still, as a child, I felt like anything could happen in here.
I'll just say this. You have a cousin that was afraid of toilets for a while after Jaws.
Because the shark could come up through the toilet?
Yeah. I don't want to say which cousin. It's Teddy. He was afraid of the shower, the toilet, anywhere Jaws could attack. I'm like, how do you say to someone, oh, I guarantee you, buddy, there's no way for a shark to come through the plumbing. Yeah. Steven in Houston.
Hey, guys, how's it going?
Good.
Loving the show. I wanted to ask you, Ron, what you thought about Minority Report. That's one of my favorite sci-fi Steven Spielberg.
Have you seen Minority
I
Report?
didn't see it.
I watched it. I always felt weird and even kind of bad that there were no minorities in that movie. I just
not
think
right.
if you're going to be Minority Report, there's a chance black people should be in it.
If you're going to make a report on it.
Yeah.
Well, is a Scientologist considered a minority?
That's a great question. And one for the ages, my friend. One for the ages. They're doing that documentary Clear, where they out Scientology. I'll be watching that.
I'll be tuned in.
Although it's hard for me to call any one religion weirder than another religion.
Yeah, but the problem is it's weird right now. Every religion goes through weird phases. And it's subject for ridicule because it's new. So it's like, that's clearly silly. You know what I mean? Like when it's been formed not that long ago, it's very easy to say this is ridiculous. But they also have, quite a track record right now of not looking so hot.
But do you know how many Scientologists I've had on my show, and they always seem cool, like every time they have one?
Yeah.
And a lot of your favorite actors,
it's true,
Scientologists.
Yeah, tons.
And one of your favorite rock stars, Mr. Beck.
Yes. Which I'm going to exempt him from, though, because born Scientologist.
He was born this way.
He was born this way, so you can't really blame him.
And his wife, I think, was a born Scientologist as well.
Yeah. That is true. But I had a friend who he works in film and TV, and he was working in New York and then had to go out to LA for a while, and said that you actually have to, like, where you can make jokes about Scientology in New York, you cannot make jokes or comments about Scientology in LA if you work in the film industry or in TV.
There's that many people that work there?
There's so many people, not just famous people, but it's just, for some reason...
I still would anyway. It's just like when I make jokes about Jews in this building. I see a lot of people like, really? But I just find, even my own spiritual beliefs to be ridiculous.
Yeah, they're crazy.
They're just nuts.
They're only for your own comfort of your mind.
Yeah.
And it's how,
That's how it should always be.
Yeah, and then that's how everyone gets through the day. Could you really stand in judgment of how somebody's not going to just go crazy, fearing death constantly? It's like, let them have what they need. Everyone has their own things. Otherwise, we're going to be running out in the streets, ripping our hair out, screaming we're all going to die. So,
Dan, this really makes me mad. Do you remember the guy Jack that called? Because it could have been Cajun Jack. I wish I could have fucking laced into him, because he's like, woohoo, Ron took my call about Bennington. But then a couple things before, he was like, that interview, I hope it's not common. I love Ron, but he has 3 other shows to do interviews.
That wasn't an interview. It was a conversation.
It was a hang, my friend.
That was a conversation.
Although I might put it on Ron Bennington interviews now, come to think of it.
We reserve the right to interview at any time.
Yeah, we do. During the Ron Bennington interviews, I'll just do this while Gail's talking.
What do you mean?
Something is wrong with your radio.
I'm thinking about changing the name to Bennington Interviews.
I like that.
Not Ron Bennington.
I like it.
Any Bennington.
Yeah, any
interview.
Bennington could do it.
At any time.
Well, I won't bring it up now, but there was something brought up about you doing a major interview. Wait a minute, it would be weird for me to say that, but yeah, that got brought up.
What do you mean?
I don't want to give away all the details. I like to keep things up until they're locked in.
Really?
Yeah. Don Wiki Wicklin asked me about it earlier this week.
What?
Yeah.
Something
and I said
coming down the pipeline?
Yeah. She's very, very busy with #Bennington on the occasional Friday here on Opie Radio. But there may be a possibility.
Well, I'm intrigued.
Liz says, thank God we were almost at the end of the show without an almost famous reference. #It's all happening. #Bennington. I will only say this to you, Liz Sets Fire. Prepare yourself for the end of the show today. That's it. Prepare yourself. Any other plugs we need to do? Because we're getting out of here in a couple of minutes.
You also have another radio show that you could plug your own radio show.
Well, tonight let's do this. Tonight on the Indie channel, special guest Todd Glass on the Indie channel, Unmasked, and Opie Radio at 11 o'clock. The Sam Roberts Show will broadcast live from WrestleMania today at 3 p.m. The main focus of the show is ring ropes, 4 or 3.
And
all the way. It's Eric Nagel. Airs at 7 p.m. tonight on Opie Radio with guests Kevin Hefferman and Steve Lemmy from Broken Lizard. They raised millions of dollars within, I think in 15 minutes, they raised $800 million for their next movie, which is Super Troopers 2. Sean Ashmore from Fox's The Following and Bridget Mender from NBC's Undateable. It's all happening every day. But anyway, that guy Jack, I wish I could have just laced into him. And I didn't know I took like a call from him.
Yeah, and you were probably nice to him.
Yeah. I wish he would have said, I'm just the asshole from Twitter, and now's your opportunity to lace into me if you'd like to. People never do that. What I'd like to start doing, like, if you just read bad stuff on Twitter, we'll have a song that's just like this: trolling, trolling, trolling.
Right.
All those assholes trolling Twitter. I might even have an announcement. I'm doing an MS with Ducky next week.
Nice. Very cool.
Not next week, the week after that. But I may even have another major name after that, but it hasn't gotten locked in yet.
Well, I love the Duckman.
Hey, I'm also in this situation. Somebody from the booking department claims they gave me a DVD that needs to be replaced, like given back. Mm-hmm. And I don't ever remember getting the DVD.
What's the movie?
Well, it doesn't matter what the movie is, but the fact is sometimes they'll give you DVDs that this has to be sent back because we're so worried about it going out. And I don't remember being handed the DVD.
Damn. I hope you find it.
And the person swears to me. Well, I couldn't find it because I don't have it.
You don't have it?
Yeah. I've never thrown out a DVD in my life.
Is this a case maybe that we need to look into?
It could be for our new detective agency, hashtag Bennington. I'd love to do it.
Bennington and Bennington.
Oh, this is Jack from Twitter. Hey, Jack.
Hey, guys.
Fuck you. Thank you. Now I feel so much better.
Now you feel better. And you know what? Now you guys can start over. You know what I mean?
Scratch that itch.
Now you can start over.
Yeah.
It's clean slate.
Now we're even.
Even Stevens. You're about square.
Bono, bono, bum, 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 bum. Oh yeah, that's all the John Williams things. And then he did all the Lucas's, then he did the Superman. It's all the same music. Everyone says he's a genius. Is he? Or does he just play the same riff every chance he gets?
Are you going to do a Ron and Fez show today?
Yeah, we are. I don't know exactly what we're doing. We're going to have some people on the show with us as well. I think Fez is... There's one person in America Fez hasn't had a fight with. He's going to go back and fight. He was just attacking on poor Big J. Okerson yesterday.
I know, I was listening.
And then Big J had a fire close to his house. He had the big explosion. And then I said to Jay, I wrote back, oh yeah, that fire was started by Fez's in a rage, right? And then he's like, ha ha ha, hashtag fire starter, he sends back to me. And then a building explodes across the street from me. Fez is in a rage.
Oh my God.
Why I slept or attempted to sleep.
He has the power. He has the fire starter power.
He's Gertie. He's Gertie the fire starter from E.T.
And fire starter can only be an evil villain's power. I feel like...
what about the Human Torch? What about the Human Torch, Gail?
I don't know a lot about comic books. But it seems like it's for... Fire is for evil.
Do you notice that the girl who played Gertie, her name is...
Gertie.
Yeah, but real name.
Gertie Jr.
Gertie Jr. is out there. I think her name is Diane Furstenberg. But
Why are we both so bad at recalling things that we know?
Because it's only about us.
And then
Everything's only about us.
And then we do a radio show together.
Who was the guy?
Drew Barrymore. I saw it a little bit. I cheated though. I saw him typing it in.
We got to get going. This was a lot of fun today, Gail. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me. And let's thank our special guest who was in here today, Kevin Hines. And thank you, folks.
That was great with Kevin.
For listening. It is Bennington and Bennington Investigations. If you need any problem solved, let us know. And always remember...
Ladies and gentlemen, the evening is over. We hope you all enjoyed yourselves, and we'll see you all again in 1974.